ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Retro Warriors episode 331. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Saturn Guy is also here. I don't know why I'm telling you that.
Yeah,
but,
I don't know either.
Here you go. Our producer Guy is also here.
It's news to Saturn. It's fine.
It's
there
news
you go. He didn't.
I'm surprised by everything.
And this is kind of dovetailing into our housekeeping for the week, which is that I've been on break from the show for 2 weeks because my life got a little crazy, and I'm like barreling straight into the holidays, and I was like, I need a couple weeks of like not having to worry about the show.
Yeah.
In next recording session, everything will go back to usual. But what that means for this episode and episode 332 is that one, we're covering topics that I don't know anything about. I didn't play these games. I didn't even make an effort. I didn't attempt anything.
Right.
And two, Guy's going to be here to kind of fill in some of the gaps because he did play 50% of the games that we're going to be talking about tonight.
To be fair, hours-wise, I probably played like 80% of the games.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. So Guy's going to be on the main show for this episode and next episode, and I'm still going to be here hosting it and stuff. But
right.
So it's a little off kilter. These next two episodes
might be strange, but here's hoping that it's at least interesting.
I do like how we're presenting this like we don't record with Guy every single episode
every time,
and we just tell him to shut up for an hour of it.
Sometimes more than an hour.
I'm just excited that I can talk to you and you'll respond. Like, it's fine.
That's true. We will.
There you go.
It won't just
like
be shouting into the void like normal.
My week, I've been playing the Forza Horizon 5. It came out sometime recently, and I picked it up. And it's real good. It's got some bugs, some weird kind of like launch day server related woes and a couple glitches here and there. But just as far as fun level, it's real good. They cut a lot of the like beginning tutorial stuff out, so you can very quickly get online and start playing with people. And I've just been having a real good time with it. It's more Forza. Nice. It's the next one. You know, it doesn't like upend any of the stuff you may know and love from Horizon 4. But it's real fun.
Hold on. Not only does it not upend anything, it doesn't change shit except that it's in Mexico.
Well, it changes. There's a lot of UI streamlining. There's a lot of restructuring of how you receive things and how in different incentive structures and stuff. But yeah, like the actual like driving the car around, it's kind of the same.
Yeah, you got the same race types. You got the same radio stations with the same British DJs. There is
now the music on the radio stations are totally different.
That's true. It is. They are different songs. They relicensed them, but the
and not all the DJs are British. They replaced the classical station with a Latino woman, and she's the host of that one. Although I do kind of miss that specific announcer because the whole bit of that radio station was that he hated racing, so he just kind of complained about it all the time. So that kind of sad to see him go. But yeah, it's a lot of the same.
Like it's not like FIFA repeat, but it's not like super innovative either, I guess.
I mean, I guess the difference for me is I don't give a shit about racing cars. Which sounds kind of weird. But what I like about the game is the incentive structures of it and the way it encourages you to play and the way it structures that. I find the gameplay systems in it really interesting. And they've really kind of streamlined a lot of that, made a lot of it make more sense, made a lot of it more functional. A lot of the UI is fixed. They've got a whole so basically, they've incentivized things that you had in the other game, but you weren't incentivized to do, like collecting all the cars. Mm-hmm. You've now got like this, effectively like a big bingo card that when you collect every GMC car, you get like a big reward, and it puts them on this little like stamp book looking thing that you have. So you have an actual incentive for getting other cars. Because in the old game, in 4, it was like, well, you got your 4 or 5 cars that you like, and you never give a shit about anything else. And then all of a sudden, the cars you were receiving as rewards you didn't care about because you're like, I'm not going to drive it. It's not one of my 5 cars. These are my cars. And I like that structure a lot. They've also changed how it unlocks new events, so it's kind of more piecemeal without being overbearing, like 4 kind of had a tendency to be. Mm-hmm. And I also like just little things. Like in 4 there were barn finds, right? So every now and then they'd be like, hey, go to this area, you have to find a rundown barn there, and if you find it, then you get the car in it and we'll fix it up and it'll be cool. And in this one, you find the barns, but unlike in the old one where after that the barn just sat there for the rest of the game on your map doing nothing, now players can randomly send you cars that will re-inhabit those same barns. So now these barns have a purpose other than just sitting on your map and being an annoying blip that you've already achieved. Different races have different reward structures based on successive racing in them. So like you do an event and then it's like, cool, you did it, now do it again, here's a slightly different secondary objective and you can get more points or more accolades. I'm going to stop gushing about it, but you're correct. The actual driving the car is, I mean, it's the same. You get in a car and you drive a car and you're like, all right, I'm on the road and it's got ray tracing and it looks good and it's in Mexico, which is really cool.
Yeah, like the scenery is great. I thought, like driving around that volcano was neat as shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't know.
It's like if you hated Forza Horizon 4, this will not sell you. If you like Forza Horizon 4 and you were maybe kind of annoyed by it sometimes, I think it might. I think it might sell you.
Yeah, I think
to kind of put things succinctly.
I think you hit on it with the UI updates, because like before you had like 8 tabs in the menu and each tab had like 10 selections you could choose from, and
yes,
now it's down to like 4 and each page has like 3 or 4 things.
Yes, it's a lot cleaner, a lot more streamlined, a lot easier to quickly find things to do that will give you new interesting rewards. Which is what really it's just a dopamine machine to me. So that's what I use it as, and they have increased the amount of dopamine that I receive from it. So I'm happy about that. But that's really it. It's just lots and lots of Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah. That released to you early adopters last Friday, I think.
Yes. Now I bought the VIP package not to get it early necessarily, but because I liked 4 enough, and I bought the VIP package, and I got all the cars and all the unlocks, and I don't ever have to pay for anything in the game. Anything that comes out, I'm just gonna get. The 2 expansions, I'm just gonna get. Right. And so I had enough goodwill built up with Horizon 4 that I was like, yeah, I'm willing to go in ahead of time on Horizon 5 with this VIP package and just have it from the beginning. And it included early access, so that was a cool bonus. Now, if they were just saying, hey, give us $10 and we'll give it to you early, that's bullshit, and fuck you.
Right.
But it was already in a package I was planning on buying. So yeah, I did get it like 4 days early.
That's fair. So I finished the Alan Wake remaster. It's still the same game, which is fine. There is the DLC, which I'm probably not going to get around to. I didn't get around to it the first time. I'm probably not going to get around to it this time. The game itself is good, but the ending is stupid and doesn't make sense. And I had managed to block out part of that in the last almost 10 years since I played it last. And right before I got to the end, something happened in the game that suddenly made me remember the last sentence that the character says at the very end, and I was like, oh shit, I'm about to come up on this really dumb ending. I totally forgot about this. And then so the last like hour and a half of gameplay was just me being like, oh, it's gonna be so dumb, I have to brace myself for this. And then it was just as dumb as I remember, but
perfect.
Fortunately, the gameplay itself is fun. I have a bad habit in all horror games of trying to play them like the first few Resident Evils, where I just hoard all of the ammo and only use the weakest gun unless I absolutely have to use something else.
God, that sounds so annoying.
And the way that Alan Wake works is every chapter, it resets your inventory and you find things again. So every chapter I will have never used the best weapons, and they're just sitting in my inventory being useless.
I'm the guy that if you give me a rocket launcher in a game, I go into the next room and use it immediately.
Yeah, like, I don't. I gotta save it.
If it's one guy, I'm like, eat rocket.
So as I was approaching the end, I was like, I'm gonna use my good weapons this time, and so I just started going hog wild with the flare gun and the shotgun. And then I come across a giant trove of basically infinite flare gun ammo, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I can just keep on using this for the rest of the game. But no, it's still good. It's still a solid game as long as you don't mind the dumb ending. And because of that, I was in the mood for that kind of very, very story-driven Remedy shooter game, and so I went right back into Control to try to actually finish it this time. And Control reminds me how bad I am at aiming. Because Alan Wake, because you have to hit them with a flashlight first to make them vulnerable before you can shoot them, and the flashlight has a auto lock. So as soon as you hit the flashlight button, it locks to the nearest target, and you can just fire at them. And Control does not. Like, I think there's an accessibility option for lock on, but the game encourages you to try without first.
I'll be honest, I struggled aiming in Control. Anyway, now granted, I was playing with a controller, and I usually play faster-paced games on keyboard and mouse these days because of my excessive oldness. But yeah, I feel like I struggled in Control as well.
Yeah.
I was usually using like the shotgun version of the weapons whenever I could.
Yeah. I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking I'm just going to turn on some of the accessibility options just to kind of make it a quasi-story mode for myself. Yeah. But I do hopefully plan on finishing it this time, because I didn't the last time I tried the game. I got a good chunk in and then just set it down for some reason. So I'm hoping this time I actually get to the end.
Yeah, it was a game that I was enjoying, and then I was just like, you know what it was? I hit a really bullshit puzzle, and it was so annoying that it was like out of principle. I was like, I'm so frustrated with you now, game.
Those are the parts that I enjoy in the games. It's when I have to deal with all the combat, combat after combat after combat, that I just kind of get tired and set it down.
Yeah. Guy, you're here. What have you been doing this week?
The new MTG Arena set dropped,
and this is a card game.
Oh my god, I hate you so much right now. It's annoying because like I know you know what it is.
Yeah, he's talked about it on the show before.
I know that you spent years adoring Magic the Gathering and have some sort of principled stand against it being digitized.
Honestly, I don't. I just like how much it upsets you.
But yeah, no. Innistrad Crimson Vow came out on Wednesday or Thursday. I don't know.
This is the 6th set in Innistrad, right?
I don't know.
We've got
overall
Innistrad, Shadows over Innistrad, Eldritch Moon, whatever the follow-up in the original Innistrad block was, Crimson Vows, and then we're going to get, there's a second, the one after Crimson Vows also in Innistrad, isn't it?
No, the one before it was Midnight Hunt.
Okay. So this is like got to be one of the most visited planes in all of Magic history.
It does seem pretty visited. This one's about vampires.
Well, yeah, they're all about vampires.
Well, I mean, Midnight Hunt was more about werewolves.
Right, but there were vampires there, right?
Well,
like
sure. But this is like one of your new mechanics is like blood vials, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know. That's been fun. I've been playing limited the past couple of days, or drafts, just to get like a sense of the flavor of the expansion. Because like I don't know,
you know those fancy computer assisted drafts, right?
No. I mean, yes.
Oh.
Well, one of those was correct.
Those are opposing answers.
Those are two different things. I get that. But so there's two different drafts that they have going on. Well, there's a few different ones, but for your best of one drafts, you've got what they call premier draft.
It's like assisted, isn't it? Like so, like the computer picks it takes the empty seats and picks for you, so it goes faster.
Right. That's
not picks for you. They fill empty seats with computer drafters. Basically, is what I'm saying.
Correct. That's not out yet for this expansion. Apparently,
it's weird that they have to do it per expansion. That's strange.
Well, they do.
Like
so they rotate that. I forget what they call the format. It's quick draft. They rotate that every 2 weeks, right? So they'll do like a different set every 2 weeks in that draft format.
Mm-hmm.
And so the last time they did the last set that they were doing the draft for was Innistrad and Midnight Hunt. Now that this one has been released, instead of doing this one so that they can force you to pay for the other one that's more expensive, they're doing like 2 expansions ago for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
In that quick draft. So I'm doing like live draft.
Yeah.
Which
with all other humans.
With all other humans. So, it's a little bit smarter. You have to have a little bit better decision making on what you're taking in the first 3 picks and things like that.
And so these are cards?
Yep. They are cards.
Okay, I'm with you.
Cards, they're like little printed pieces of paper that they've scanned and put into the computer.
I doubt they scan them. I doubt they scan them. They probably make them digitally first, and then they print them out on their inkjet and then sell them to you in a
You
pack.
can't draw on a computer. If you try that, you will mess up your screen.
Yeah, you'll get ink all over your monitor.
Perfect.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's been fun. I enjoyed, like I said, I enjoyed drafting the new sets just because it's fun to get the flavor that the creators were going for, and you don't really get that in like standard formats or pre-constructed formats.
That drafting's great.
Yeah. Other than that, I've been playing Trails in the Sky for our next episode.
I know that one.
Yeah. That's
Saturn, wake up! He said a JRPG.
Yeah, I'm just working on my week updates, putting one of you to sleep at a time.
That's good.
Perfect.
You got to stagger it.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will talk much more about my Trails in the Sky experience next week. But
I'm sure, yeah.
Let's do the news.
The news.
First up, fan translation released for F-Zero Climax on GBA, because you know what needs fan translation? An F-Zero game.
That one has more story than most of them do.
Honestly, F-Zero Climax.
More story than most of them is literally any. They said one word, it's got more story. Go ahead, guy.
I was just going to say F-Zero Climax sounds like a Captain Falcon porn.
Yes, it does.
If I remember right, the GBA games all were more story heavy than the others, and this one was apparently the most story heavy.
Because there were 3 GBA games.
Correct.
And I played the first one on GBA not that long ago, and I didn't see any story. But maybe it was the second and third ones.
Right. It's been a long time since I've looked at any of them, to be honest.
Justin, that's your secret. You never see any story.
Perfect.
He's story blind.
I've gone story blind, Paul.
I'd waited for 5 years for a game to come out, and I was playing it today, and as one of the cutscenes was going on, I was like, I'm gonna go make a cup of tea while this does its cutscene. Then I came back to it and I was like, now I can play a video game.
Yeah. Now that I don't know what's going on, it's time to resume.
Saturn, I know what's going on. There's bad guys and I have to kill them. That's it. What else do you need? GoldenEye 007, the N64 game, has been unbanned in Germany.
Yes, and naturally, immediately, dozens of news sites were like, this clearly means that it's about to be released on N64 Online.
You know, if you make a bad prediction long enough on a long enough timeline, it will eventually come true.
Potentially.
Why was it banned in the first place? Did they just hate Oddjob?
No, they had. Germany used to have very, very strict censorship of video games. And if a video game had a certain level of violence or referenced certain things, it was not just rated highly, it was outright banned. And we didn't see that start to turn around in Germany, I want to say, until right around 2010 in that area. That they've started loosening restrictions. And the problem with that was, since so many publishers just make one copy of a game for all of Europe, if it got banned in Germany, they just wouldn't release it in Europe because it wasn't worth their effort to avoid that one market.
Yeah.
So that was a problem for a while there.
Sega and Microsoft are exploring a strategic alliance for, quote, new strategic titles and, quote, a next-generation development environment.
That's a lot of buzzwords.
Before anyone says anything about this level of synergy, I want us to all take a step back and realize that this does not mean anything. That Microsoft's buying Sega, or Sega's buying Microsoft, or whatever other ridiculous news things are going to go out there. This is just two companies shaking each other's hands and smiling at the cameras. That's all this is.
I went back and looked, and it's almost the same phrasing that Sony used when they said they were having their strategic partnership with Microsoft to license Azure servers. So, you know.
Look, whether you love it or not, if you exist in the computing space, you probably have a strategic alliance with Microsoft in some way. Like, you just
even if your business just owns computers.
Yeah, you strategically bought Windows 10 machines. Eureka's president announced that the previously unannounced home port of Tetris the Grandmaster will be delayed.
That was a neat way to announce a game by saying, we're sorry it's being delayed. This thing you didn't know was even going to come out anyway.
They gotta hammer out those Z blocks. They're tricky, so they gotta figure that out, and then it'll be out post haste. We promise. Metaverse is a thing.
Yes, I've heard about that.
It's no longer Facebook. It's now Metaverse.
Oh, no, not just that. Every company says they're going to have a Metaverse property now. Microsoft says they're doing Metaverse stuff now, and EA wants to do something in the Metaverse.
What the fuck is a Metaverse?
It's basically kind of like a Second Life kind of thing.
Okay, no, Second Life is a video game title. I understand Second Life.
Well, they also consider Roblox to be a metaverse. Any kind of like shared universe where you can buy things or interact with things within that universe separate from the real universe.
They're called video games.
Well, they're apparently bringing it to a business and application level. Like you'll be able to have virtual meeting rooms where you and your coworkers go into them, and you just sit at a virtual table and have your virtual PowerPoint presentation.
We have that.
Yeah,
it's called video chatting.
Yeah,
with a screen share.
No, it's all in VR now. It's metaverse.
What is happening?
Yeah,
but you can do it with the avatar of how you wish you looked.
And also, somebody had to purchase the virtual meeting room for real money on virtual real estate. So now it's metaverse.
No.
It's
not dumb that it exists.
It's a little dumb that it exists, but the branding of it is what's the most dumb.
That is what's dumb.
And I feel like over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've seen so many headlines that are just buzzword after buzzword, something metaverse, something blockchain, something NFT.
Right.
And it's always things that are completely unrelated to anything I would have previously associated with those terms.
Now I'll tell you what this is. If NFTs are involved, then all this is a way for them to further legitimize selling you NFTs.
Yes.
Because let me tell you, companies love that idea.
Yes, and that was a lot of it.
How could you not? Like, what are we selling them? Nothing. Well, then why do they want to buy it? Because we told them it's something? Well, how do they know that it's something? Because a computer told them it is?
Right.
Well, so they want to buy it? Yeah, they can't stop buying it, actually. It's crazy. And we didn't have to produce anything. No, nothing at all. You know.
I was watching, I can't remember if it was CNBC or one of them financial things. We're talking about different upcoming metaverse properties, and they were interviewing a guy who runs a current metaverse server that isn't even VR. It just plays like a video game, essentially.
So is metaverse a VR platform?
It can be VR or it can be traditional.
What do you mean
can be? Yeah. and they were talking to this dude, and the one that he runs basically just looks like Second Life, where it's just like people interacting in a virtual world. And they were like, well, what makes it different? And he's like, well, the whole world is made up of tracts of land, and each tract is an NFT, and you have to purchase it if you want to put anything there. And some people purchased some land over here, and they're running a concert, and somebody else purchased some land over here.
Is that it's a scam?
Pretty much, yeah. The financial markets are getting involved in it now, and thus quickly the wealthy people will have all the virtual real estate in the metaverse, just like in real life.
What is the point in having a lawnmower man type reality if we're just gonna let all the rich people buy all the shit like they do in real life? What is it? Like, I already live in a world where Jeff Bezos owns everything. Yeah. Why do I need a fake world where he owns everything again?
Yeah. And along the same chain, I saw, or along the same lines, I saw EA, Square Enix, I want to say Microsoft also said they're going to start implementing blockchain into their games. And some of them say it in the same breath that they are saying, we're entering the metaverse. And it's, it's just, it makes me feel like the previous generation felt when they saw everybody saying, and now we're joining the webs.
Well, what's frustrating me is, like, I understand NFTs. I know how they work.
Yeah.
I own an NFT. I understand the blockchain. I understand crypto. I understand how these things work.
Yeah.
My problem is that it feels like they're just like adding extra words to it to make it seem special. I'm like, no, we already have it. We already understand. Why? What are you doing?
Yes.
Stop it. Stop doing it this way.
Now the sad thing is somebody might listen to this episode in 10 years and be like, man, they are so far behind the times. This is just everywhere now. That's just how we work. But
yeah.
But who
Oh
knows?
no, that's definitely what's going to happen for sure.
Yeah.
Because again, let me tell you, when you tell a company, oh hey, instead of having to make physical things in the physical world where you have to deal with shipping and production and labor and stuff, you could just make a JPEG and put it in VR, and someone will give you money for it.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, what company wouldn't want to do that?
Right.
And I said it today in the chat. I said, any video game company, any video game company,
videos
has 100 artists on staff,
right?
And any one of those artists could crank out a JPEG in like 15 seconds. And you're telling me that they're not looking at this shit and going, "Why are we making video games? People are buying JPEGs. Like, what are we doing?"
Today, I saw a headline that was, I think it was Take-Two programmers and artists are saying they don't want to work on NFTs. Like enough of them said it out loud that it became a headline. So clearly these companies are already thinking about that.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you this: they've been thinking about it for a year or two.
Right.
They're like, there's no way this isn't new.
Right.
Speaking of very 2021 headlines, Nintendo reducing production of Switch due to chip shortages.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I think we saw it coming.
Yeah. Gary Bowser of Team Executor. I guess you pronounce the X. Gary Bowser of Team Executor has pled guilty to piracy charges in suit brought by Nintendo.
Yeah, that's the group that hacked the Switch, or one of the groups that was hacking the Switch, but then also selling their exploit.
Yes,
and they and other members of the group are currently wanted, but unlikely to be extradited here for charges.
Fans found a weird angry Mario sprite in the data of the Sega Saturn game Astal.
Yes.
Astal.
I always called it Astal. Yeah, it's a goofy looking Mario too.
Square Enix removed the paid boosts from Avengers and are really very, very sorry. They're just so sorry that they did the thing they said they wouldn't do.
It's weird that they introduced the paid boosts right after it was released on Game Pass, and that suddenly had a bunch of people playing it for free. And then once they had, sold a bunch of them, that's when they got rid of it and apologized.
How long do you think it's going to be before people are selling NFTs of tickets to get in line to buy PlayStation 5s?
I would not be surprised if it's not already happening.
Just occurred to me. LRG and Team 17 are re-releasing the N64 and Game Boy Color versions of Worms Armageddon.
Yeah, it's a good game.
So
and
that's one of the good ones.
When I first read that headline, I was like, why? What? 'Cause that's a good game, but why?
Yeah.
And so I go online and I look up the price of the Game Boy Color game. And I'm like, so it's going for like 20 or 30. I don't get it. And then I look at the price of the N64 game and it's like $200. Like, oh
my God.
That's why right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
A prototype device already has the Switch N64 controller working on a real N64, if that's the thing you want.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Make a legit OEM N64 controller for an N64. That's good. That's clever.
I guess.
And finally, the Wii reboot of A Boy and His Blob has been ported to Switch.
And it's also on everything else. I didn't realize it until I was looking it up, but it's already on Xbox, on PS4, on PC. It's fucking everywhere.
Is it any good?
Yeah, I hear it's okay.
I had some fun with it. It does have a dedicated hug button. So anytime you want to hug the blob, you just hit that button and they hug, and it's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen.
It came out and it wasn't like people didn't go crazy for it, but it was like a solid C tier kind of not a hit, but like people that bought it enjoyed it. I put it very much in the same camp as Eevee the Kiwi.
Like, I never played it. I have the original Boy and His Blob for Nintendo.
No,
or for NES.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, in the remake, when you like let go of the button, does he run like another 5 steps?
So it's nowhere near as frustrating as the original.
Okay.
It's not a frustration simulator like the first one was. Instead, it's a platform game.
That
as the original should have been.
Okay. The only thing I really remember about the original is root beer equals rocket.
Right, yeah. There are still jelly beans, but it's not nearly as obtuse as the original one was.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the topic at hand. This week we're talking Fatal Frame.
Yes.
No. This week Saturn is talking Fatal Frame.
More or less.
Which is kind of like if Resident Evil met Pokemon Snap, which just sounds terrifying. And this is a game that because when we were doing our After Hours show, you were like, I want to do Fatal Frame, and nobody else wants to do Fatal Frame with me, so I'm just going to do Fatal Frame.
Yeah.
And so here we are.
Yes.
This was developed and published by Tecmo,
right?
Released on PS2 in Japan as Zero on the 13th of December 2001, in North America on March 8th, 2002, and in European territories as Project Zero on August 30th, 2002, published by Wanadu. Is that the sequel to Xanadu? I didn't know that came out.
It's Xanadu 2 Wanadu.
No, dude, it comes first alphabetically. It's the prequel.
Oh, right.
Right. It's the prequel in the Xanadu trilogy.
It's Xanadu Zero Wanadu.
And then the third
Xanadu
movie is
super fun.
The third movie is Faxanadu. That's the final movie. The Xbox version came out in North America on November 22nd, 2002. In Japan as Fatal Frame Zero Special Edition on February 6th, 2003. And in European territories on May 2nd, 2003, published by Microsoft.
It's weird that the only time the name Fatal Frame has ever been used outside of North America was the Xbox port of the first game in Japan. And I don't know why. It's just weird.
Strange. As far as first encounters, I've never played this game.
Yeah, but you've heard of it, right?
And I've heard of it from you.
Oh, really?
And that is it. I think Pablo's mentioned it before. I think he likes Fatal Frame.
It's a good game.
But that has been I've heard it mentioned a couple times. I assume you take pictures of ghosts.
That's true. That's a part of it. Yeah.
And that's it. That's my Fatal Frame knowledge in a nutshell. For some reason, I thought it started on Super Nintendo. You know what? I'm thinking of Clock Tower.
Clock Tower started on Super Nintendo.
Yes. I thought Fatal Frame and Clock Tower were the same thing until this moment.
They are different things. Clock Tower, there's no cameras for the record.
So Clock Tower is basically just Fatal Frame with no cameras then. Got it.
Which horror series was it that had a game that was in a room or in an apartment?
That is Silent Hill 4: The Room.
Okay. Does Silent Hill also have a camera-based game too? Or no?
It does not, no. However, in Silent Hill 4 specifically, there's first person whenever you're in the titular room. And you also occasionally encounter ghosts that you have to trap. So there is some overlap.
Yeah, I tried playing that game for a few minutes and no. But I heard about Fatal Frame somewhere in the same time frame, and again,
release
was like no.
Silent Hill 4, I would say, is the one that scared me the most of the early games, especially because I had just gotten my own apartment to myself for the first time right as it came out. And like I get home and I power it up and it's a guy trapped in his apartment, and I'm like, maybe I don't need to play this right now. Maybe this is a later thing. Now, for me, I first heard of Fatal Frame when it was, still being previewed in magazines. And me and several of my friends were big fans of horror games at the time. So we were always looking at what the upcoming horror games were. And based on just the previews of it, they basically said, it's a horror game, but you have a camera and you take pictures of the things and that's all you do. And so we just thought it would be Pokemon Snap, but scary. And and then when it actually came out, I saw a couple of reviews. I think Play Magazine was the first one I saw. And that's a magazine I used to have like utmost respect for because they always treated games as art instead of as product. How
dare they?
I know, right? The editor of that was like, this is the scariest game I've ever played. It's a 10 out of 10. And I was like, well, no, it's the stupid camera game. And so I picked it up from work and it's scary as hell.
I do remember I didn't work at a game store when it came out, but I worked at a game store shortly after because I was probably started working at a game store around 2005, so it was still on shelves. I remember seeing it.
That's about when Fatal Frame 3 came out, was 2005.
Maybe that's the one I saw coming out then. Yeah. But I do remember seeing it and looking at it and being like, so you just take pictures with the camera? And then I remember thinking, does the camera shoot a bullet after that?
Yeah, it's a bullet camera.
And when I found out that you don't shoot the ghosts or whatever, I was like, nah, I'm done. I'm good. I don't need that. Anyway, let's talk development of Fatal Frame.
So the director is Makoto Shibata. And I found a couple interviews with him, and in each interview I read with him, he comes off as increasingly deranged. So maybe that kind of helped with the game itself. So he says he got the idea for the game after having some dreams that he believed were actually supernatural in nature, that his dreams were being visited by some supernatural entity.
Oh boy.
And in a later interview with PlayStation Blog, he went into depth about it and said he often sees things in reality that aren't really there. And he wanted to convey that feeling in a video game. And I think he's...
I have to say, at least he recognizes that they're not really there.
That's something. That's good.
That's a small step.
Right. But the fact that he does believe that it is legitimately supernatural in nature makes me think maybe he really does believe it's there and just not in a way that other people can tell.
Well, maybe he developed it as a tribute to the old gods and they got mad at him and have been driving him slowly insane since.
Yeah. He didn't do a good job is what happened.
They're all just like booing him constantly. These fucking ghosts that he sees.
Right.
I was saying booers.
I'm just imagining the ghosts holding up like Olympic style scoring cards and they're all giving him like a 3.0. So yeah, he had worked on a game called Tecmo's Deception on the PS1 back when Tecmo still felt the need to put Tecmos in front of everything they made. And it was quasi horror-ish. And after he did that game, they were given an early PS2 dev kit by management at Tecmo, and they decided that the Ghost game they wanted to make, they'd try it on the PS2. And they incorporated a lot of the ideas that they had while making Deception that just didn't fit the game quite right. The biggest one being using a classical style Japanese mansion as the environment. They decided that wouldn't work with Deception, so they used it here. And their initial goal when they were working on the game was just to scare the player as much as possible. They wanted the game as scary as possible, even if it made it a bad game.
That's dedication to your craft, right?
Right.
That's what that is.
And in one of the later interviews with Shibata, he says, in retrospect, that was probably a mistake because he's since talked to many people who've told them they really loved the game, but it was too scary and they couldn't finish it because they were too scared.
I can't even start it, so I'll write him a letter.
Right? I did see some other interviews, one on the Japanese Tecmo website. The character designer Jin Hasegawa stated that he attempted to make the game as monochrome as possible, only adding color when necessary. And playing it, you absolutely see that because when we first played the game, it was on my friend's washed out projection television, and this was pre-HD, so it was old style projection, not even a DLP or anything.
Yeah.
And playing the game on an old style projection television, especially one that's washed out, we were constantly questioning whether or not one of the video cables got disconnected from my PS2 because we just thought it was in black and white now. And the sound director, Shigekio Okuda, said that they had intended to make the game in 5.1 surround because, again, make the game as scary as possible.
Right.
But then they scaled it back to 2.1 because they realized that most PS2 owners didn't have a surround system in 2003.
Yeah, there is the home theater experience was in a very different place in 2003.
Yeah. Sorry, 2001. Sorry.
Even more in 2001. For people that don't remember then, if you had like a 26-inch TV, you're like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. And then a separate speaker for your TV, what do you need that for?
Right.
It's got a speaker built into it.
I knew exactly one person who already had surround sound by that point, and he would not have allowed a person to connect a video game system to his equipment. Like that
How dare they sully his Laserdisc viewing arena?
Exactly. Okay. That's exactly what it was, sir.
For people that weren't around in that era, big movie snobs loved Laserdisc. They're like, man, this is the shit.
Yeah, this is the future.
I mean, it's just this future was in a smaller format.
I love having to flip the disc over halfway through the movie.
It enhances the experience.
It's
I bought
like
a
listening
Laserdisc
to a
player that
record.
auto flips. Yeah. So yeah, but it is in 2.1 sound with simulated surround using middleware. It sounds pretty good, honestly. Letting my soundbar, because I popped it into my PS3 just to see how it would play. Letting my soundbar just kind of pick up and guess the surround worked really well. I was pretty impressed with that.
Well, that's good.
You ever try playing it with headphones?
No, I know better than that.
Oh, okay.
Is that too scary?
It might be too many scary.
Too many scary.
It's way too many scary.
I like
it's
that there are
like
quantas of scary.
Yeah. And they did, for inspiration for the game, the team in general watched as many Japanese horror movies as they could while working on the game. And is that
Turn of the
obvious.
millennium Japanese horror movies.
So that's what happened to the director. They just like Clockwork Oranged him
right
with Japanese.
We watched The Ring too many times.
Ringu 1 through 50 or whatever.
There are so many references to things like Ringu and Ju-on and Darkwater and all these movies that I watched.
I forgot about Ju-on.
Oh yeah. It's all over these games. Just all of that is there. And they realized later in development that most of the game could be just, the story would make no sense if the character just pulled out a cell phone and called for help. So they decided to set it in the 80s just so they could avoid that plot break, which happens in every modern horror movie where they have to stop and explain that they don't have service. And the earliest concepts they had for the game actually didn't let you fight back at all. You simply had to evade ghosts entirely while they tried to kill you.
That's just real life.
Yeah.
I'm already just having to evade ghosts so that they don't kill me.
So eventually they realized that just gets kind of old and unfair. So they wanted some way to fight back, and they did ultimately land on the camera instead of more traditional weapons. And some of the team members, especially the management, the executives at Tecmo, were strongly against the use of the camera as the weapon until they actually saw it in action, and all more or less immediately changed their minds and decided, yes, this is the game that we were supposed to make. And that is how it came about.
Can you imagine like trying to sell that to an executive at a game company? Right. Like, no, okay, so how do you beat these ghosts? Well, you don't. You run around them. Well, can we do something else? We take pictures of them.
So Pokemon Snap, I like it. That sold well. Get it out there.
Right.
This is rated E for everyone, right? No.
It's like Ju-on with Pokemon. It's great.
I think it did get away with a teen rating, though. I think they somehow pulled off a teen rating, despite the fact that it's way scarier than most of the other horror games of its era.
I saw a presentation, and you can't just say scary.
It's scary, first of all.
Oh no.
When I was looking through this, I was reading some other reviews, especially contemporaneous reviews from when it came out, and almost every single one used the phrase "hauntingly beautiful."
Isn't that just karaoke?
And I was like, okay, guys, I get that you had to squeeze in the ghost pun in there, but can one of you have come up with a different ghost pun than hauntingly beautiful?
It's a hauntingly played out pun. I'll give them that much.
Right. It does look really good. It's using, from what I read, it is probably using the same game engine that they used for Dead or Alive 2. So if you thought that Dead or Alive 2 looks good, just imagine that, but ghosts.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is an early PS2 game. So you have a lot of those like super kind of fuzzy backgrounds, but the character models themselves are really detailed, really smooth. The later Xbox release has further enhanced visuals, and I believe it supports up to 1080i, which that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, it doesn't have surround, but it does have that really nice fake surround, which is really nice and spooky sound wise. However, if you're the kind of person that recognizes stock sound effects, like if you're the guy that recognizes the Wilhelm scream in every movie, you're going to recognize the same 2 or 3 female shrieks playing over and over in this game because they're reused from like every movie ever.
No.
But if that doesn't bug you, you'll never notice it. But if you're one of those people that recognize that, man,
if you're a female shriek aficionado, then you might.
It feels pretty.
Look elsewhere.
Like
I mean, that's
think
how
they
I like to spend my alternate Friday nights. It's just listening to women's screams on my giant stereo.
I just go down to the stock sound effects store and pick up Women Screaming Volume 8.
Hey guy, why'd your HOA make you move out? I don't know. I was just listening to records.
I was just listening to Now That's What I Call Women Screaming Volume 12.
Female Shrieks number 15.
The English voice acting is fine. It's pretty similar to early PS2 games.
So bad.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say bad, but okay for the era?
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say?
That's pretty much what I'm trying to say.
Era appropriate.
All right. I can't speak to the Japanese voice acting. Maybe it's better. I don't know. But the English voice acting is very early 2000s voice acting.
So like Xenosaga.
I would compare it to Xenosaga. I would compare it to the drier teenagers in a drama school version of Xenosaga.
All right. That sounds awful.
If I remember right, one of the first pieces of spoken dialogue is the main character, and she's like, "I remember what happened. I remember when my brother was lost."
Oh no! See, that just sounds like Zelda from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I can see that. There's some of that in there.
Let's talk story, because that's really I know that obviously this is a game with gameplay, but I feel like people come to horror games for spooky story.
Yeah, and it's convoluted. Oh man, like it makes most Japanese horror of the era seem perfectly rational.
Oh no.
So you have a novelist. I think he's a novelist. They refer to him in game as the novelist, but I think also he's a teacher somehow. Anyway, he's a guy named Junsei Takamine, and he was trying to come up with ideas for his next book. And so he and his crew decide to go to a supposedly haunted mansion called the Himuro Mansion in the woods, in the woods in the mountains. And they go there for research and inspiration. And naturally, they go missing. So this kid, Mafuyu Hinasaki, who might be one of Takamine's students or his protege or something, like, I don't think novelists normally have proteges, so I never quite understood what the connection there was. So he goes to the mansion alone to try to find this whole team of people that vanished in the mansion, in the supposedly haunted mansion. Mm-hmm. And so naturally he also goes missing. And then his right. And then his younger sister, Miku, decides to go to the mansion to search for him. And that's...
Did no one call the police at any point?
No one has called the police at this point. And
okay, multiple missing people. No one's called the police. All right, I got it. Yep.
Exactly. This is early 80s.
Justin.
Right.
They had police then.
They just assumed they were hanging out at somebody's house watching Adventures in Babysitting. Nobody.
So far, I've got breaking and entering. I've got disappearance.
Right.
Like, I'm just saying, police stuff.
No, clearly this is way under the radar of Japanese police of the early 80s.
Right. They had other problems going on. They were dealing with Kiryu kicking down doors, so they couldn't handle both.
So Miku, who is our protagonist, that is the playable character, after the prologue. In the prologue, you play as Mafuyu just long enough for him to get haunted or whatever.
Yeah.
So now you're Miku.
Just long enough for him to get haunted?
Yeah.
I done been haunted.
Oh, no, he is now haunted. I figure they just go to like a JRPG menu and the status is changed to haunted.
Right.
So also, for some reason, Miku and Mafuyu have always been able to see supernatural events. That's a thing in their life.
Is it?
Yeah. They're just normal old Japanese teenagers, except for also they see supernatural events. Mm-hmm. Also, in the U.S. version, Miku is 18, and in Japan she was 12. But let's not get into that.
Not shocking.
Yeah. So the kids received a camera called the Camera Obscura from their late mother, and Mafuyu had taken it to the mansion. And when Miku gets there, she finds it, and she almost immediately realizes that she can capture the spirits of ghosts that it then allows them to rest.
Question.
Right. And then she can absorb their powers and get the metal blade and go on through to Dr. Wily's castle. I'm with you.
Man, if she had the metal blade, this would be a much easier game.
This is
Just
the most
saying.
overpowered weapon in a game, really.
All right.
How? I have a question. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sorry, actually, but it's the entire point of me being here. Is to
How
ask
could
questions.
you?
Please.
But how does she realize it almost immediately? Does it like? Does it? Go ahead.
Intuition.
So you actually play through the segment. So you get the camera, and she's looking at it. And if I remember right, there's some like quick flashback where she's like, "I remember Mafuyu telling me about it," and he's just like, "It's a special camera." And then it cuts back to her. And so she's just standing there holding a camera, and then a ghost attacks her. And if I remember right, she trips and hits the shutter on the camera as she trips, and it causes the ghost to stagger. And that's when she realizes, oh, I should just take their picture, and it kills them.
So it's the Simpsons at like Itchy and Scratchy Land logic.
Yeah, pretty much that, yeah.
Okay, got it.
That was the original inspiration for the story.
Right, yeah.
Itchy and Scratchy Land episode of The Simpsons.
Speaking of the story, the American cover of the game says based on a true story, which it's not.
Yeah.
For the record. And when later asked, Tecmo clarified, "Oh no, that's the subtitle of the game."
I tried not to laugh.
I'm gonna make a movie called Guy's Personal Autobiography, based on a true story. But that's just the title,
right? Yeah, you shouldn't expect them to be telling the truth. It's just a subtitle.
Hey man, if my purple hair gives me powers, I'm all for it. Go for it.
Yeah, you can, but only if there are ghosts around. Otherwise, it's mostly useless.
Well, yeah, they're scared of purple, so I'm safe.
Yeah, they hate purple.
Right.
They're already scared of cameras. Why not? Let's just go wherever we feel like it, I guess.
We'll just keep on running with it.
I mean, how Green Lantern's scared of yellow. So, whatever.
Just, whatever. Anybody can be scared of things. So along the story, along the game, she eventually realizes that the camera that she got from her older brother that used to belong to her mother had obtained it from one of the residents of the mansion at some point, and attempting to use the camera is what killed her mother. That doesn't stop Miku from continuing to use it for the rest of the game. She's just like, whatever, it's fine.
Oh, so she doesn't even seem concerned about it?
I don't ever recall her seeing... She's constantly concerned about, like, everything happening, and especially her brother being missing, but not at all about the potential ramifications of what she's doing.
At any point, is she prevented from putting the camera down, leaving, and calling the police?
No, not that I recall.
Just curious.
Yeah, I don't ever recall anybody trying to block her path. Like, some doors will close, but anytime you go to the exit to the mansion, my best recollection is she's just like, I can't leave until I find my brother.
Well, when the video game gods close one door, another door opens. So
yeah, pretty much. You got to have a path forward.
It's just good design.
Yeah. And as she is exploring the mansion, trying to find her brother, she starts to see rope marks on her wrists and ankles, because that's normal. And as she explores the mansion, she learns about the rituals that used to be performed in the past of the mansion, where they would strangle a young girl and then use the ropes to seal a hell gate to keep the dead from entering the world of the living. Apparently, you have to strangle them first and then reuse the ropes. That's part of the ritual,
right? Because when you strangle a girl, the soul goes into the rope.
Right.
And then you can use the soul rope to tie the hell gate.
Exactly.
It's going to be my text message tone when Guy texts me now. Is him saying, when you strangle a girl. Pablo, clip that out and send it to me.
No.
Don't worry about the context. It's fine. So she learns that the last person who is intended to be the sacrifice was a girl named Kirie Himuro. And she was chosen by losing a game of tag to a blind woman. That's how you choose your sacrifice.
You got to pick, and I mean, I guess they didn't have straws.
Basically, what it was, because if I remember right, it's shown in an actual cutscene and also described, is they put all these young girls, like maybe 6 or 7 years old, maybe younger than that, in a room with a blind woman, and whichever one, while trying to avoid the blind woman, gets touched by the blind woman, is the sacrifice.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
that's basically how democracy works.
It's like combining a Mayan ritual with Marco Polo.
Yeah, basically that. Yeah. Marco Polo has long been the established method of fighting the undead.
There you go.
So shortly before that intended final ritual happened, Kyrie, the final sacrifice girl, fell in love with a visitor who came to the mansion. But her father, who is the lord of the mansion, feared that would lead to her not wanting to go through with being a sacrifice, so he killed that visitor. And Kyrie, who previously was so proud of the fact that she was going to be the sacrifice, was upset that her father killed the visitor, so now she refused to go through the ritual.
Well, that fucking backfired.
Right? And because the ritual didn't happen, the Hellgate opened up and,
As it does, right.
We all saw Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, right. So now the mansion's haunted. And once Miku sees this and also sees that there are rope marks all over her hands, naturally she decides that she'll continue trying to find her brother instead of leaving, as you previously suggested. And you face down with some ghosts, and you put them to rest with the camera. You end up facing Takamine, who is the first guy that went missing that her brother went looking for. You find the master of the mansion, Master Himuro, and then finally the final boss ghost is Kyrie. But in addition to the mean ghosts, you occasionally encounter helpful ghosts, or at least non-aggressive ghosts. And one of them is a young girl in a white kimono who just kind of points you in the right direction and warns you about a ghost coming up. Very friendly ghost, little ghost girl.
Much like Casper.
God damn it.
Yeah, it's Casper in a kimono.
It's a special guest appearance by Devin Sawa.
I know when you say ghosts, you mean like scary ghosts, but I'm just imagining them all as like Pac-Man ghosts.
Yeah, they're all Pac-Man ghosts.
3D environment.
Yeah, it was basically, when they say based on a true story, it was based on some guy playing Pac-Man.
Right. It is based on it. They're not lying. You just wish they were.
Right. So eventually you learn that the girl in the white kimono is just the younger version of Kyrie's ghost. So Kyrie has two ghosts, Hostile Kyrie and Little Girl Kyrie.
No. One soul, one ghost.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Apparently they're both ghosts because you can destroy them both with the camera.
The guy was offended. Ow! The ratio's all off.
So
you strangle
this makes no sense. Math is wrong.
All right. So the younger Kyrie, who is still duty bound to serve as a sacrifice, she's trying to help you, but older Kyrie, who is angry that her lover was killed, is not trying to help you. But the younger one helps Miku find her brother Mafuyu and put an end to Kyrie's rage. There's multiple possible endings. The first one, you defeat Kyrie's ghost, and then younger Kyrie reminds Kyrie to do her duty, and the older defeated Kyrie binds herself in the ropes and then walks to the Hellgate and completes the ritual.
Good Lord.
And then tells Miku and Mafuyu to escape, and Mafuyu says, "No, I have to stay behind and keep her company so that this doesn't happen again." And then Miku leaves and is sad.
That makes no sense. What?
Nobody said this was going to make sense.
He said it didn't make sense.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well,
he prepped us appropriately for the senselessness of this.
Yeah. It just seems like you've got a ghost who's like solving the problem, and then a guy is like, "I'm going to stay with you."
So then there's the alternate ending where Mafuyu does leave with you. And it's like, oh, okay, well, she's going to take care of it. We will leave. And then Mafuyu is just sad about how Kyrie will always be in pain forever just so that the other souls can know rest. And that's the ending. It's just him lamenting on how he should have sacrificed himself.
Well, it's pretty in line with the tone of most turn of the millennium Japanese
this is true
stories.
It just seems like this
is tonally correct.
Yeah, and then there's an alternate ending added to the Xbox version where it's the same as that last one, but after Mafuyu talks about how sad Kyrie must be, it then shows you a picture of Kyrie hooking up with her dead partner. in the afterlife.
Define hooking up in this context.
I think they're just like together cuddling or something, if I remember right.
It's not really what most people mean when they say hooking up.
Well, it's implied that they also hook up.
We just got a sex picture.
You know, they're hooking up. You saw them shaking hands.
That's why they call it the sex box.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, that's your three possible endings. Is either Mafuyu stays behind with the ghost to keep her company, or he complains about how sad the ghost is because he didn't stay behind, or he still complains about how sad she is, but then you learn she isn't sad.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like Mafuyu just kind of has some like white knight syndrome going on. To be honest,
a little bit. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Well. Story's great and all, but much like those ladies from that commercial who wanted to know where the beef was, I want to know where the gameplay is. So tell me about that.
So you explore the mansion in third person. You have a quasi-fixed camera angles. They do occasionally shift and rotate because this is a fully rendered 3D environment. And you explore with your flashlight and your camera. And you'll occasionally find items laying around like film and healing items, like in most adventure-y games.
Right.
You also find a ton of notes and recordings that give you background story on the ritual and the characters and the people you're trying to find, and stuff like that. And also there are some puzzles, which is a common trope in horror games of this era. They're little puzzles you have to solve, which inevitably require you to go forward 3 rooms, find a puzzle piece, come back 3 rooms, remember where you're supposed to use it, and then it'll open up a door to go forward. There are save points, naturally. The game saves automatically at the end of each chapter and calculates a score for you, which is a little weird for games of this era, especially for story-driven games. But you are given a score. You're also given a score on screen whenever you take a picture. It tells you how many points that picture is worth.
Well, that's kind of neat. That's kind of Dead Rising-y.
Right?
I like that Justin seems like he's like, oh, a score. I might play this game.
I can get numbers?
Like, that's the part.
You didn't tell me I could receive numbers.
You didn't tell someone would grade me on my performance. There's a little on-screen filament indicator on the screen, which is why it's called an on-screen indicator. And it lights up if there's a supernatural event nearby. It gets much brighter when it is close.
Wait a minute.
What?
This is Luigi's Mansion.
It is Luigi's Mansion. It actually came out after Luigi's Mansion, so
This is Luigi's Mansion.
I'm just saying. You do. Sometimes it'll be telling you about non-hostile stuff. Sometimes there's a ghost in the area trying to attack you.
So it's just a general indicator that there's a thing.
Right. And if I remember right, it either goes white or orange, depending on if it's non-hostile or hostile. But that might have been one of the later games now I'm thinking about it. And using the camera switches the game to first person. So you're walking around in third person, and then if you have to take a picture of something, it cuts to the camera's viewfinder. And if you take a picture of a ghost, be a regular ghost, non-hostile ghost, echo, whatever, you'll get some points based on the framing of the photo.
How does that work?
What's that?
How does that work?
Well, you want it in the middle.
Yeah, basically, the closer to the middle it is and the closer you are to the event, you get more points. So if you just barely caught it in the edge of the frame, you're going to get very little points. If it's dead center and it's as bright as it can be, you'll get more points. But a lot of these echoes, the non-hostile ones, will vanish pretty quick. So if you don't immediately pull out your camera and get that picture quickly, it'll start to fade and it'll be worth less points, but you're also trying to center it. So trying to both center and get it before it goes away makes it a lot harder to get full credit for a lot of the non-hostile ones.
Well, I don't agree with that. I think your subject should be slightly off-center.
Right.
Well, that's just your, particular style.
Right. Guy, this was the 80s. They hadn't discovered artistic merit yet.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you saw the hair they had in the 80s.
This was prime Miami Vice era.
Yeah.
So with the hostile ghosts, they just try to come at you at varying speeds depending on which entity it is. And sometimes they'll like lunge, and other times they'll just kind of slowly go back and forth and wobble towards you.
It's called shambling.
Yeah, they shamble. However, they are ghosts, so they'll just go right through any wall or door or obstacle you put between you in it. They do not care at all about that. So you do want to back up to give yourself some time, but you don't necessarily want to deal with getting around doors or whatever, because that only costs you time and not them.
Oh shit, I didn't think of that. That's usually my go-to method in like horror games, is just run away.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you want to back away, but running away often doesn't help much. So you kind of have to get around them sometimes and hope that they don't lunge when you're close.
Oh, that's actually kind of a neat mechanic.
Right? And also, if you harm them, it will often, which you do by taking a picture of them, often it will push them back. The closer they are, the more damage it does to them and more knockback it does. So you want them close, but if they're too close, obviously they can hurt you. And if you catch them right before they hurt you, it's a special shot called a fatal frame, or a zero shot in other regions, which not only does more damage, but it knocks them back even further, giving you more time to line up for the next shot. So there is a risk reward there. But because it is first-person view of the scary thing that is intentionally designed to be nothing but scary, you're basically having to stare down the scary thing until it is as close to you as possible in order to do the most damage. So I always thought that was a brilliant mechanic for a horror game.
Oh,
if
yeah,
it were
that's amazingly designed.
Right.
It's putting horror directly into the gameplay, which I want to say you don't see very frequently, but I don't play a lot of horror games, so I don't know. But when I think about other horror games like Resident Evil, it's like you shoot it with a gun,
right?
And it doesn't make you have to be in that like scared horror zone for a long time.
That's one of the things I've always respected about Fatal Frame. Whereas a lot of my other favorite horror games, if you were to replace the entire environment with like cutesy, cartoony things, the game would still work. It would still be the same game in essence. And the only thing that makes it horror is the theming and the design. And it's still basically that here, but because of the first-person camera view, it's really emphasizing that horror, and it gives you a tension mechanic to tie in with it, which I always thought was really smart, really well implemented.
I feel like if they replaced the environment and the enemies in this game, it would turn into horror on accident. If they were just like, it's Barney the dinosaur now, like watching him like come at you first person
through walls,
that's still scary. I would still be scared.
So I always appreciated the combat mechanics, and then also, because it's constantly scoring you, both when you take pictures and at the end of the chapter, you can then use the points that you get to upgrade your camera and give it special abilities, like a
gun.
Yeah, you just attach a Tommy gun to it, and the bullets go right through ghosts. So that was the worst upgrade you could have gotten. But
I feel safer, Saturn.
But no, like extra knockback or faster reload or things like that. You can also find different types of film in the mansion that do more damage for some reason, because that's how film works.
Makes sense.
The better quality film you have, the more it hurts ghosts. That's just how reality is now.
Yeah. Well, let's talk reception for Fatal Frame.
Right. So it did fine. It reviewed pretty well, but it sold okay in Japan. They said it reached about 42,000 units sold. Tecmo said they were surprised by the reception in Western markets. They didn't ever tell us how many it sold, just that they were surprised by how good the reception was. They chalked it up to the then popularity of Japanese horror films in Western regions, with remakes of The Ring and The Grudge and all that stuff. One of the big complaints you saw in a lot of the early reviews of the PS2 version was how much of the memory card it takes up, which is about a quarter of your entire memory card, because it stores all of your photos that you take and lets you review them if you wish. Obviously, that's not an issue on the Xbox, because it had a hard drive with a whole 8 gigabytes of storage on it.
Oh my God.
So you could just store all the fucking pictures on there.
This buddy's got 34K of RAM.
Right.
This is totally a tangent, but I used to have a 14 kilobyte RAM upgrade for like an old server.
Nice.
And it was like 2 foot by 2 foot.
Oh,
it
yeah,
was
it's
huge.
massive.
It was gigantic, and it weighed like 30 pounds. It was end to end chips.
Oh yeah.
Like it was.
Yeah, even the old RAM chips that we pulled off our old servers at work, they're all like 64 meg expansions, but the actual chips on them are humongous for a 64 meg RAM card. Anyway, but yeah, it generally did fine, but not amazing, and it generally reviewed okay. The Metacritic is hanging around 75-ish between the two consoles, a little higher on Xbox if I remember right, but it does fine.
Now that does sound very fine.
Yeah, it was,
which is
got a
another way
lukewarm
of
reaction,
saying mediocrely reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like it was not given its time in the sun, like it was kind of passed on when it shouldn't have been, or does that feel pretty in line with your experience with it?
I feel like at the time it was like there were a couple of magazines like Play that I mentioned that really sung its praises. They said, hey, this is innovative and this is different, and more importantly, it's really scary, and if you're looking for the really scary, this is the one you should look for. But I do agree with that sentiment of the people that spoke to the producer of the game that maybe it was too scary and makes it too difficult to complete, but not because the game itself is difficult, but because it's just the tension level is too high all the time.
Yeah,
like
'cause it's not even just that it's scary; it's that to be the more you're willing to let yourself be scared for longer periods, the better you're going to do with the game.
Right. And also any good horror has that tension and release cycle where things get really, really, really tense, and then something happens and it releases for a bit, and you're allowed to kind of breathe before the tension builds again. And this does that too. It has those moments. However, even in the low tension moments, ghosts will respawn. So you'll be roaming through an area that should be clear, and a dude shows up. And maybe it's the easy one, and you can just ignore him, and he'll go away after a few minutes. But maybe, as you get later in the game, it's constantly the obnoxious ones.
Yeah.
And that gets a little frustrating. I don't want to say that it was... It's certainly not a bad game. I wouldn't rank it as high as I would gameplay wise as the best that Resident Evil or Silent Hill has to offer, but I would say that it is creative enough that it probably deserves more credit than it got. But if you're looking at it purely from a gameplay perspective, 75 is probably about right.
Sad, and I look at everything purely from a gameplay perspective. Well, let's talk Legacy then.
Yeah. So it was followed up with some sequels. Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly was on PS2 and Xbox. Fatal Frame 3 was just on PS2. There was also a fourth game, which known by Western fans as Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, which was co-developed by Tecmo and Grasshopper Manufacture, which is Suda51's company. And it was published by Nintendo on the Wii.
I remember that because everyone was like, what the hell is this Nintendo game?
Right. And unfortunately, it never left Japan, despite huge outcry in the West asking for it. But it is a Japan-only release. It was advertised as coming soon in France. Nintendo or Tecmo, one of them, put out a magazine advertisement advertising the game. And then when asked about it later, said, we never announced that was coming out outside of Japan.
Yeah.
Actually, Tecmo was kind of catty about it too when they were asked if it was going to come out outside of Japan. They said Nintendo is the property holder of that title, and they have decided that it will not be released outside of Japan.
Jeez.
So it is unfortunately stuck there. There is an excellent fan translation though, so if you are interested, that one is available. It's a little weird, but it plays fine. There was a 3DS spin-off called Spirit Camera.
Oh my God, that's a Fatal Frame game? I have that game.
Oh, it's a Fatal Frame game.
I did not know that. My wife bought that game and then never played it once. And I was like, maybe I'll play it. And then I looked at it and I was like, it looks a little scary.
Yeah, it's like a mini version of Fatal Frame. It's not as scary, nor is it as much of a game. But it is a product you can buy on 3DS.
But it's in 3D.
You like games in your game. There's not a lot of games,
Right.
So,
There was also a full remake of Fatal Frame 2 on the Wii that was released in Japan and Europe, but not over here. But
Fatal Frame Boogaloo.
Yeah, Fatal Frame 2 Electric Boogaloo. And then there was the fifth title, Maiden of Blackwater, which was released on Wii U in 2004 as a episodic game. And it was released physically in Japan and Europe as the full game, whereas over here we just got the free-to-play digital release. And then just recently, the full game was released on all of the consoles, so everybody can see exactly how okay it was.
now, kind of bringing us home here, if someone wanted to experience Fatal Frame,
Yes.
outside of the obvious choice of Spirit Camera on 3DS,
Right, yeah.
Where would you recommend they spend their time?
If you can manage to track down the Xbox version, it's a really good port. But since it's kind of pricey these days, all the games in the series are kind of pricey these days, by the way. I would emulate the PS2 ones. They emulate just fine. They look fine on the emulator. There's some texture mods people have put out to make them look slightly better. So that's probably the route that I would go. The 3 PS2 games, I would say, are the best ones in the series. The third one gets a little weird because it revisits Miku. Like, all the games have different protagonists and different stories and different environments, but Miku shows up as a character in the third game, and you find out that she's, first of all, the canonical ending was apparently that her brother stayed with the ghost, and also maybe she's in love with him now and trying to resurrect him so they can get married.
Okay.
Which is a side plot in the fifth game.
Any weirder than anything else we talked about, so okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, the first 3 are fine. Those are the ones you should look at.
Well, you know what else is fine? Our Patreon over at patreon.com/retrowarriors, where you can get uncut versions of this show. You can get Talking Wizards. You can get After Hours. It's a great place, and you should go there if you feel like giving us your money, which we would appreciate. We also have Redbubble links in the show description if you just want to get some Retro Warriors merch, and it'll kick us a little bit of money there. And of course, we would love it if you rate and reviewed us on anything. I don't care what it is. If you have the ability to rate and review us on something, then please do it. It helps a lot.
If you just want to walk around your neighborhood telling people that you'd give us a thumbs up, that's fine.
I would. That word of mouth is fantastic marketing, so I would take that any day of the week. If you just want to shout it out your car window, right? As soon as this episode's over, you're sitting in traffic on your way to work, just start yelling it at other motorists. That's safe.
Just find a clip of Justin doing like his Justin voice or whatever and to crank it up.
Justin voice. But we do want to thank the following specific patrons for all that they do for us, starting with Suffer UM
and Michael Cabetti.
Ebucel.
Tom Danks.
Nicholas Perfect.
Ryan Walton.
Matt Kovacs.
Michael Castro.
Chris Ruppersberg.
And Free Code Camp Quincy Larson. I got us all out of order because I don't know why I can't do a third person. It's like juggling. You throw a third person.
It was weird for some reason.
You just stopped talking, so I jumped in.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
I wasn't sure if you were expecting a third person.
Those are all the patrons we want to thank this episode. And we want to thank you, Guy, for being here.
Yeah.
And you, listener, for listening to the show. Because, thanks.
That's how we end every episode. Thanks.
Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always,
let us cling together.